I've seen a lot of negative headlines lately about London losing its place in the financial world. Some of you might have seen a headline recently that London is 23rd in IPO activity, and there's lots of noise about Singapore and New York eating London's lunch. But I decided to look into the data myself. Here are some of the articles showing that London is losing its place. The Financial Times had a big headline about London's IPO drought. And here is the report from Bloomberg showing the UK all the way down below Oman and just above Greece, which is a really low number of IPOs for a place that's as proud as its financial services industry as London is. So like I said, I decided to dig a little bit deeper to find out if this is actually true. Is London losing its place in the world as a global financial capital? And to figure that out, I gathered data from the following places: the Bank for International Settlements, the London Stock Exchange itself, the World Federation of Exchanges, which is a place where all of these stock exchanges around the world send data together so it can be normalized and compared against each other, as well as Crunchbase and Dealogic, which have a lot of data on markets and companies, respectively. And the first thing to know is that IPOs are not the only way that companies raise money on the stock market. An IPO is the first time that a company sells shares of itself on a stock exchange. However, that doesn't have to be the last time that they sell shares of themselves. So here is a report from Dealogic showing the amount of money raised by not only IPOs, but also other share sales. And you can see the United States is number one, no surprises there. And in this chart, the UK is fifth. So even though we're 23rd in terms of IPO activity, we are fifth in terms of total money raised by all companies. However, selling shares is not the only way that companies raise money. In fact, much more money is raised in the international bond market than there is on stock exchanges. So if I go back, this is total amount raised in 2024 by the largest stock exchanges. And you can see that the United States is number one with about $340-ish billion raised. However, this chart shows money raised by international bonds. And this is actually quarter by quarter. So here you can see the United Kingdom or London. They raised $400 billion in just one quarter. So London is issuing or raising more capital through bonds than the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ combined ×4. Now, of course, there's a lot of governmental borrowing and equities tend to get a lot of the hype, but the bond market still is incredibly important. And the UK and London in particular is the dominant leader in raising money through international bonds. Another place that London is still dominant, and you'll tend to see a theme, basically where the world needs to come together to exchange money and debt. London tends to still be the place to do that. Forex, or foreign exchange, is simply exchanging one currency for another. And the most simple transaction that you can do is, hey, I have pounds and I want to go to Europe on vacation, so I need to buy some euros. And you just do an exchange at one point in time. However, there are many more complex ways that you can exchange currencies. You can do forwards, you can do swaps, you can do options. And in every single one of those categories of foreign exchange transactions, London is dominant. So it's not just dominant in overall transaction volume, every type of foreign currency swap, London is on top. Another place that London shines is so-called derivative swaps. A derivative swap can actually be pretty simple. If you have Bank A, who has a loan on its balance sheet and is fixed rate, and Bank B has a loan on its balance sheet that's variable rate, but Bank A and Bank B have different risk tolerances, they might swap the interest payments on those loans. So they're basically rebalancing their balance sheets or swapping risk in some way. And London is the place where large institutions come together to make those deals. A place where London used to be dominant was cross-border lending. So imagine you're a company in some emerging market economy and you just want to get a bank loan to buy a piece of equipment or something like this. London used to be the place to go to get that money. However, during the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, it took a huge hit, enormous, more than any other place. And I actually haven't found a great explanation for why that is. But if you redraw the line at 2020 instead of 2000, London does seem to be getting its feet back under it. Once again, it's the blue line, and you can see since 2020, the UK has issued the most cross-border lending of any country in the world. So I do believe that it will probably extend its lead and regain its place as the place where the world comes to get loans if they can't find it in their home country. Now, we talked about London having a lack of IPOs, and that is new companies listing on a stock exchange. Why would that be? Well, most of the time it's actually because the cool, exciting companies that do exist in London decide to actually list their shares in America because they can get higher valuations. It's pretty well known that American stocks are more highly valued. However, London is still producing a lot of really cool companies, especially in the area of fintech. So I use the service Crunchbase, which has a database on startups and interesting companies. And I just did a very simple filter. Give me companies with at least $100 million in estimated revenue. And then I filtered by the industry of fintech. And then once again, filtered by city, headquarters location. And the only three places that really seem to have a core, a cluster of fintech companies were London, New York, and of course, San Francisco. It's technology. So most of the things that I've talked about will generate some fees for an investment banking company. So I thought another interesting way to find out if London is still a global financial capital is just to look at the fees collected by investment bankers. New York is the capital of investment banking in the States. London is the capital of investment banking in Europe. And here you can see the USA is probably about twice as much investment banking revenue as Europe. So London is still, if not competitive, it might even be dominant in all of the areas that are listed on the screen, especially in international bonds, Forex, derivatives, and I do believe it will regain its lead as the cross-border lender of choice. However, it's no longer relevant in the equities market, which is too bad because that is the most exciting part of finance, in my opinion. You know, nobody gets up and says, oh my God, the bond market is down. You know, it's always NVIDIA or the stock exchange, et cetera. So that was my finding, that London has fallen behind, unfortunately, in equities, but it does retain a lead in all of these areas. If you'd like to learn more about the research that I did, I wrote a blog post about it and explained my methodology. So feel free to take a picture of this slide, scan the QR code, and you can read the research that I did there. I'll give you a second. So he asked, this is the slide showing IPO volume by country, and he noticed that China really took a hit in IPO volume in 2024. And I actually saw data from 2025 in Bloomberg. Actually, I think it was the slide right here. You can see this is in 2025. Hong Kong and China are second and third. So I think that was just an anomaly in 2024. Any other questions? Sure.
This obviously focused more on that late stage IPO stuff.
No, I only focused on mature fintech companies because I think there will be better data on them, or at least the revenue estimates will probably be slightly more accurate. So that's how I did it. Yeah, great question though. I did try to quantify like early stage startups, but it's just really hard to get reliable data on them. Cool. Well, everyone, my name is Cal Mitchell. Again, I am a data engineering consultant. So if you or your company needs help with a data project, I would love to help you out with that. You can contact me through sequelpipe.com. And yeah, now we're going to talk about how London hopefully will not fall behind on the important issue of digital currencies. And to talk about that, we have the Director of Financial Technology, Giles Kemla from Imperial College. Thanks for coming, Giles.